This is about why I hate charity, with one exception. And it's odd to hate charity because charity is good, but I can't stand it because it involves the rich and powerful designing good deeds for the rest of us to perform. Like at Live Aid, the rock star said, let's help Africa. And that meant, give me £5 so that I can save the only continent on which I don't own a mansion. And the UN does this too. The UN designs good deeds for the rest of us to perform. The UN believes in diversity, which is a great theory. Any poor person has a right to live in any rich country. But in practice, poor migrants don't easily mix with the culture they've migrated to. But the UN people don't see that because at the UN, all the cultures and the races mingle harmoniously because they're all on UN salaries. And in reality, migrants settle in the poorest areas of the rich countries. So the local poor have to perform the good deeds on behalf of the UN fat cats who've designed these good deeds. And the UN fat cats never visit the poor areas where migrants settle because the restaurants there aren't good enough to feature on a restaurant finding app. And this UN brainwave, every poor person has a visa to anywhere, will cause problems which the UN won't have to solve. If too many poor people arrive, the rich nations will break. And if too many poor people abandon the poor nations will break as well, because there will only be the sick and the elderly left to look after each other. So this good deed will destroy nations. But the United Nations can't see that. It's blinded by its own goodness. It's doing something bad in its own self-interest, which it thinks is good. It's the same with charities in the Mediterranean. Fishing charities. They go fishing for migrants. They pluck them out of the water. They photograph them to create emotive imagery and generate more cash for themselves. And then they dump the migrants in Europe, in towns and cities, where the migrants are homeless, with poor language abilities, few marketable skills, and no friends or family. So looking after them, the good deed is done by somebody else, even though it was designed by the charity to enrich the charity and not to help the migrants who are being exploited. So the charity is doing something bad and thinks it's good, just like the UN. Same thing at home. The welfare state involves good deeds designed by the rich and powerful for the rest of us to perform. And the first good deed we have to perform is to pay the rich and powerful to design our good deeds for us. Everyone accepts the principle that those with money should give to those with less money. But direct donations are rather difficult to make. The money goes through middlemen, through stockbrokers or poverty brokers who work for charities or for Parliament. In Parliament there are 1,500 people, many of them millionaires with second homes, all fighting poverty with somebody else's money. And it's very tempting, all that money to give away once you've spent it on yourself. It's a bit like a cannibal trying to change his ways. I'm turning vegetarian after I've eaten you. And the poverty brokers, the poverty fat cats in Parliament are literally fat. There's so much free food at Westminster that a new MP usually gains 14 pounds or 6.5 kilograms, which is a stone in the British system. And this obesity problem is called the Westminster Stone. Poverty campaigners eat so much free food, fighting poverty, that they balloon in weight. So no wonder there's not much left over for the poor. And there's a new good deed, which has just been designed by the rich and powerful to end homelessness with £100 million of our money, funneled through charities and MPs, of course. And the homelessness problem in Britain amounts to several thousand rough sleepers on the streets and several 100,000 on sofas and in temporary accommodation, all awaiting permanent homes with £100 million. But the rich and powerful get it first. They're in charge of the honeypot. And the homelessness charities are very good at finding permanent homes for certain people, for people who work for the homelessness charities. But they're very bad at finding permanent homes for people who need them on the street. The boss of the charity gets a guaranteed salary and a nice big house paid for by the charity, which he doesn't have to share with the homeless. He is helped first. Same thing with MPs in Parliament. And the poor get helped later. So the way to help the poor now is to give nothing to charities and give directly to people on the streets. Give to the homeless. That's the kind of charity I support. And don't worry if they spend it all on alcohol. Hundreds of people take donations from strangers and spend it all on alcohol. 1,500 people, and they're all in Parliament.